Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Trust AGM. I'm Pauline and this is Akila. We are the co-chairs of the Black Asian Minority Ethnic, BAME for short, Staff Network. This year, the BAME Staff Network are opening the AGM with a presentation in celebration of Windrush 70.
The hashtag for today is BSMHFT AGM18. So if you're a tweeter and you're tweeting our performance, please use the hashtag and tweet throughout the rest of the day.
The BAME Staff Network was re-established in May last year, and our main aim is to work with the Trust to achieve greater inclusion for BAME staff, service users and carers, and improve their experiences within the Trust.
They say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it most certainly takes a village to maintain a network and help it thrive. To date, we have 76 members, 10 local site reps and counting, and we have seen a gradual increase in meeting attendance and membership. We'd like to take this opportunity to thank Brendan Hayes, our executive sponsor, who's not here today, for his continued support. We'd also like to thank Shireen Lewis, Salika Gohagan, Brenda Taylor, Munya Marenga, Selena Harrison, Pamela Wilkie, Caroline Mitchum, Latvia Rellan, Bina Saini, Debbie Green, Tracy Adkins, who in their individual ways have all gone above and beyond to support us both as co-chairs and assist with the progression of the network. We'd also like to say a big thank you to Dora at the front with the camera from Comms for squeezing us into a busy schedule to get us our new logo merchandise, which we hope he was able to grab today.
Now that our Oscar speech is out of the way, we'd like to share a few facts and figures with you about some influential BAME people within NHS, starting with our Trust. We'd like to congratulate Beresford Dawkins, Shireen Lewis, Brenda Taylor, Debbie Green, Danny Jotler, Nuala Fletcher, Frazier Mahmood, and Megan Fernandez, who were all nominated for going the extra mile for their respective categories for this year's National Windrush 70s Awards, with Beresford, Frazier and Megan being shortlisted. We would like to congratulate these colleagues on their well-deserved nominations.
Within our Trust, BAME staff make up 38% of the workforce, with 32% of that proportion being staff of colour. Black staff make up 17% of the Trust workforce, with Asian staff making up 12%, Irish and non-British staff making up 5.5%, and staff of mixed heritage making up 3%. Over the last 70 years, people from all over the world have come to work in and support the development of the NHS, making it one of the most ethnically diverse organisations to work for in the UK. There is no doubt that BAME staff have made a massive contribution to bolstering the workforce and in shaping the NHS over the past 7 decades. We are excited that as a network, we will be working with the Trust to shatter the glass ceiling of BAME progression, particularly in bands 8 and above, which is notorious within the NHS, to ensure that staff of colour from BAME backgrounds are reflected throughout the workforce at all levels.
We'd now like to introduce you to some of our network members that will present you with a monologue to take you back in time to depict the experiences of a pioneering generation. Thank you.
It is important that we do not overlook or underestimate the difficulties and challenges faced by the Windrush generation when they arrived in the UK. The facts written by Dr. Arthur Lewin may surprise many.
Black people have been in Britain from the beginning of history. The Romans noted that many of the inhabitants they encountered when they first arrived were black. Years later, the Romans sent African soldiers or generals to occupy Britain. African emperors of Rome spent years living and ruling in Great Britain. During the 1700s, many Africans were taken to England in bondage. Later, Africans came as seamen or settled in coastal cities. Thousands of black soldiers from the Caribbean fought and died in British uniforms in Europe and around the world before, during and after the World Wars. Shortly after the Second World War, hundreds of thousands of migrants from Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados or other Caribbean islands came to the big cities of Great Britain to work in factories, transport services or the NHS. These individuals helped create, shape and maintain the dynamic British nation from the time that it began.
Britain actively encouraged large scales of emigration to Britain from the Caribbean and Indian subcontinent in order to gain aid to help rebuild the country after the war. Help was needed to rebuild houses, staff hospitals and drive buses and trains. The British Nationality Act 1948 awarded UK citizenship to all subjects of British colonies. We'll now show you our first sketch of a typical encounter with an official and a Jamaican.
As part of the Commonwealth, you have a duty to your Queen to help rebuild motherland. We have a shortage of labour, too many jobs and not enough people. We urgently need the help. There are many opportunities for you.
Opportunities, you say? What can compete with constant sunshine and blue skies? What can compete with picking fruit fresh from the tree? Banana, guava, mango. What can compete with that?
While there are adventures you can only imagine, the streets, they're paved with opportunity, with gold. There's good weather, you have good food, good prospects, good pay for a good day's work, opportunity to be joined by your family. What more can you want? Your Queen needs you.
Interesting. Interesting.
Hold the mic.
I will. Interesting.
Prospects are so many, so come and help and build the motherland.
Okay, I'm convinced. Count me in.
Windrush arrivals paid for their own tickets, costing £28 and 10 shillings, which equates to upward of £600 today. On its voyage, the German cruise liner Empire Windrush stopped at Mexico, passing Havana, then stopping for a short time in Bermuda. On the morning of the 22nd of June, it arrived at Tilbury Dock, Essex in London. 492 passengers disembarked. This was to be the first ship to dock in the UK, transporting citizens from the Caribbean, those looking for work and a new way of life. Our second sketch shows you two of our arrivals stepping off the Windrush ship.
Yeah, man. England.
Yes, we reached Great Britain. They call it 3 weeks.
Yes, man. Land of opportunities and dreams, brother.
So we think it's nearly summertime.
No, brother. This is June, man.
So why is it so cold?
I mean, I understand, man. Cold, brother. But anyway, let's look for some accommodation, man. We'll check it out tomorrow.
Accommodation was to prove a child. Oh, go on. Accommodation was to prove a challenge to many as they faced the infamous no blacks, no Irish, no dogs notices in house windows where there were room vacancies. They were resourceful in many ways, one being a saving initiative known as the Partner Scheme, because the banks wouldn't give them accounts, which enabled them to buy their own houses. They would rent rooms to each other to ensure that a roof remained over their heads. The new arrivals were the first in Britain's post-war drive to recruit labour from the Commonwealth to cover employment shortages in state-run services like London Transport. Many of these passengers were the first to go and work in the newly formed NHS, which launched just 2 weeks later, not 3 weeks, 2 weeks later. These are two of our nurses on their first shift, our student nurses.
Hello, how are you adjusting to this country? Is this your first shift?
Yes, it is. So far, so good. I'm making adjustments I need to do. It's going to be hard work, but I know it's going to be rewarding.
I know what you mean. A new start in a new country and a new start in a promising career. This NHS though, what do you know about it?
Oh, well, it sounds fantastic. It plans to make excellent healthcare available to all. That's what I hear anywhere. Doctors, nurses, hospitals, opticians, dentists, all coming under one umbrella organisation to provide service that is free for all.
Will that sound good?
Yes, apparently. Pioneering. This health service will be financed entirely by taxation, which means the people pay according to their means.
That's good.
It sounds amazing.
It does.
Too good to be true, really. I wonder if it will catch on.
I hope it does.
Many found that the qualifications they had acquired back in the Caribbean were not recognised in Britain, so either had to retrain in their jobs or settle for jobs that required no experience, such as hard labour in factories. Testimonials taken from a Windrush publication feature experiences of two people who arrived on the ship, Rose, a nurse, and John, a factory worker.
Well, let me tell you my story.
Yeah.
When I came to this country, there had no preparations had been made to receive me. The British people themselves were unprepared for the influx of the large numbers of migrants from the Caribbean. As a result, I received far from the welcome I expected.
Tell me about that.
I was introduced into a hostile work and social environment. I had to make my own way to the nurses' quarter, where I would be staying throughout my 2 years of training. I met this nurse from Jamaica on the train who had the same job in the same hospital. We both became good friends as we got lost together trying to find our way. And not to mention, it was so cold. I was sent to a psychiatric hospital in Cheshire when I really wanted to do general nursing.
Really?
But the general hospital and the teaching hospitals were already relatively well staffed. But there were major shortages in the hospitals, caring for chronically sick, disabled, and elderly. Post-war trauma had also greatly increased the numbers of people admitted to the psychiatric hospitals. It was in these hospitals the majority of us young Caribbean women found ourselves placed as resident trainees. But there was 2 tiers of nursing.
Tell me about that.
1 staff and 1 pupil. The staff concentrated on management position, but the pupil was concentrated on the...
Let me guess. You became a pupil.
Yes, we become a pupil. Most of us Caribbean nurses were placed on a 2-tier nursing. Due to this discrimination, fewer of us were accepted onto the staff course, despite possessing the qualification. This difference wasn't explained to us. After I completed my 2-year basic training, I tried my best to get onto the higher level course, which I was rejected and certainly couldn't get promoted at all. So I accepted night duties to fit in with my family commitments. Most times I was wholly in charge. I had to get on with the drugs, the drips, whatever treatment was needed, but there was no increase in my pay. I can only hope things get better.
Tell me about that. I can now tell you my story.
Tell me now.
It's too long, but I'll paraphrase.
Short side.
In 1948, when I left America to go back home, I decided, because I had a little bit of money, I needed to go traveling. And where could I go? They said the best vacancies were in the UK, so I came to Britain. I thought a lot about Britain. From the school days, reading from the books. But it was a different picture from the one I found on arrival.
Me know.
When I came face to face with the facts, it was totally different. 2 different things. They tell you it is the mother country.
Yes.
You are welcome. Oh, you're all British.
Yes.
When you come here, you realize you're a foreigner.
Osh.
Oh, there's to it.
Osh.
Okay. I'll leave the rest for the next time.
All right, my brother. All right.
It started with the Windrush generation, and over the last 70 years, many more have followed since. Hard-working doctors, nurses and other staff remain the foundation of the NHS. The resilience of this generation must be applauded. We need to recognise and thank them for their vision, hard work and contribution that they made to this country and to the NHS. We humbly appreciate their sacrifices and their commitment. And if you could all give a round of applause for our wonderful cast. We have Brenda, Anne, Matthew, Donna, Munya, Janice, Salika and Kuda, all who have found time in our busy schedule to try and meet and piece it together. This is the first time we've rehearsed all together, by the way. And you've all agreed to dress up and try and keep it as 1948 as possible. So we'd just like to show... But did you bow? No. Oh, take a bow. Namaste.
You will often hear the old adage that nursing isn't a job, it's a vocation. A vocation you have to be born to undertake rather than fall into. One thing it guarantees is that the majority of those who follow it as a vocation are dedicated, committed individuals who permanently have the needs of the service user first and foremost in everything they do on a day-to-day basis. The face of nursing has changed over the years, and no doubt the past 70 years of the NHS has seen changes the founders would never have dreamt of. Today, in celebrating the foundation of the NHS, we also celebrate those who have successful careers and consequently have now retired. They too would have seen many changes. It's very apt that the task I've been asked to perform today is acknowledging the nursing career of someone who recently retired from the Trust and who, without doubt, would have experienced firsthand the way nursing has evolved over the years. In 1983, a young and very green 19-year-old started her nurse training at Highcroft Hospital, and 35 years later, after a varied career spanning 35 years, retired from BHS HFT last week. What is amazing and a real testament of dedication, commitment and staying power is that her entire career has been within this trust. From being a staff nurse, night sister, remember them, CPN, team manager, matron and finally practice placement manager, Donna Lloyd has been a respected, hard-working, well-loved individual who has been a credit to her profession. It gives me great pleasure to thank Donna on behalf of all her colleagues, the service users and the families she has come into contact with and helped or assisted over the years. You've been a shining example to many, and we wish you a long and very happy retirement. If you'd like to come up, please.
As
I said, I've worked with Donna for a few years and she did retire last week, and it's been such an ordeal trying to get her to come back for the AGM the following week. But she's succumbed to all the text messages and come and see us do this play. So on behalf of the BAME network, I'd just like to thank you for all you've done for the Trust over the years.
We would force Donna to do a speech, but no, they're running against the time. So but before we close and exit, we'd just like to thank Comms and the exec team for giving us the opportunity as a network to open this year's AGM. We hope that you enjoyed our presentation, you found it informative, and that you enjoyed the rest of the AGM. And we will now leave you to your AGM. Thank you.
This leaflet is coming through your letterbox one day soon. Or maybe you've already had your copy. Read it carefully. It tells you what the new National Health Service is and how you can use what it offers. Hospitals and specialist services, medicines, drugs and appliances, care of the teeth, care of the eyes, maternity services, home health services. The new scheme starts on July the 5th. But there's one thing you should do at once. Choose your doctor now. That's most important. Study the leaflet, then keep it by you. You'll need it for reference.
Well, that was a different way to start an AGM. I'd really like to thank the members of our BME network for putting that on, for performing it. I could see how nervous some of them were before the start, but that was a really great reminder to us of the part that people who have come to this country as immigrants have played and continue to play in the NHS. So that was a great way to start. Last year, I think we started with music. We're going to end with music today. So there will be further entertainment before we finish. But there is some formal work to be done at an AGM. So for those who haven't met me before and can't read the badge, which is there, that's the NHS 70 badge. I'm Sue Davis. I chair the Trust Board and have the great pleasure of having done so for the last 6 and a bit years. This is my 7th AGM. So to chair a 7th AGM in the year that the NHS is 70, I was trying to draw some, 10 times 70, but I'm not going to say, I did think, say 10 things about the NHS. I don't think it reaches 10. But I do want to start with my thoughts about this AGM to take us back to the birth of the NHS just over 70 years ago. I'm a child of the NHS. The majority of people in the room will be as well. But I guess there are 1 or 2 folk in the room who were born before the NHS started. Anybody going to fess up to being over 70? There are 1 or 2 folk who will have been born before the NHS started and may have some memory, or at least some folk memory, of what their parents and their families said to them about what world was like for people without funds, without means to secure health services before the NHS arrived. And the subtitle, you couldn't see it on the leaflet, but the document that was produced to describe the delivery of the NHS had a subtitle. Anybody know what the subtitle was? It was called In Place of Fear. And it wasn't in place of fear of illness. It was in place of the fear of the destitution that illness could bring. If you either had to use all of your resources to pay for healthcare, or if you couldn't afford the healthcare and therefore were not able to work, and therefore were not earning. So there was a very real sense in which the fear of being ill, the fear of the impact on your life and your family's lives of being ill was a real reality for the families of folk in 1948. And I recall, although I was born some 6 or so years later, actually I recall the way my family spoke about the NHS, their attitudes to the NHS as something precious, and therefore something only to be used in an absolute emergency, which was actually not what was intended. But that sense of something precious was there at the beginning. And what's happened over the 70 years since is that actually has been replaced with a huge sense of pride in this country of the NHS. And we saw that a few years ago at the start of the Olympics, but it's there, it's very palpable. If you talk to people about what makes them proud to be British, to be a citizen of Britain, they do talk about the NHS. We have evolved, this service that we're all part of has evolved to be something that people hold very dear and feel a great pride in. And I feel a great pride in working in it, and I know that many of you who are employed by the Trust will feel the same. And what I just wanted to reflect on for just a few moments is the things that have made me proud about working for this part of the NHS over the last year. First thing to say is, and we haven't mentioned it before, it's probably there in your literature somewhere, is to say this meeting is being streamed. You may have noticed there are 1 or 2 people who are more dressed up than usual. I'm wearing a dress. So But we are live streaming this event, and indeed we're live streaming from the start. I'd just like to say hello to Louisa's mum. She's not in the room. She was our test, wasn't she? Louise was placing no confidence at all in the technology. But I'm really proud of this, because actually I think at the first or second AGM that I chaired, somebody stood up in the audience who had been a service user, who had been an inpatient, and said, when I'm an inpatient, I can't come to the AGM. Why can't you do something about it? And we started to say we would do something. And we also have in the room someone who chairs the Service Users Patient Forum at one of our secure units, who every time I've been for the last 3 years has said to me, when are you going to start streaming the AGM? We ought to be able to plug in, even if we can't come out, we ought to be able to see what's happening and take part. And it's largely been technical issues that have stopped us, but it ought not to have taken us so long. So I am really delighted that we are streaming this, that staff who can't get here, that people who are actually inpatients at the moment and therefore clearly wouldn't be able to be here, are able, if they choose, to plug in now or indeed later in the day and see what we're doing. So it feels as though the AGM has joined the 21st century. We're only 18 years late, but I'm very proud about that. One or two other things that I want to mention. I want to mention our solar services. They may get mentioned in other places today. Those are our children and adolescent services that we provide in Solihull. We took them over just over 2 years ago. They weren't in a good state when we took them over, and a year after we'd taken them on, the CQC came. And the CQC rated them inadequate. And that was one of the few bits of the CQC judgment that we didn't really argue with. We argued about a lot more. We were sad that they didn't particularly take note of the journey that we were on with those services, but we accepted they were not yet in the state we wanted them to be. And the staff plugged away at all of the issues that they knew were there, and only 8 months later the CQC came back in December and they rated them good. That's 2 whole steps of improvement in 8 months. It doesn't happen very often in very many places, but the dedication of the staff and the support that they'd had, not just from internal management, but the support that they'd had from our commissioners, the support they were receiving from carers and users, had enabled them to make that level of improvement in a short time. So I don't know if there's anyone here from the Solar Services, but I want to record my pride and my thanks for what they've done. I've been really proud of what we've done in Rookery Gardens. Rookery Gardens is a new development that is providing care for people who are ready to move on from our acute services, but not quite ready to move independently yet. And we've developed flats up in Erdington to provide absolutely brilliant accommodation for people ready to move on, to help them in the journey of preparing to live independently. We're not doing it alone, we're doing it in partnership with Mind, and we're doing it in partnership with the service users who are using it. One or two of my colleagues and I, when we first went round, said we can see a real problem developing here because this accommodation is so great, nobody's going to want to move out of it. In fact, they do, because actually what they develop is a thirst for independence and an understanding that actually that's their next step. So I'm really pleased and really proud of what we've done innovatively at Rookery Gardens. I'm really proud of the fact that I have, at induction sessions here over a number of weeks, been meeting peer support workers, people who have been users of our service, who have then become volunteers with us, and have then worked on to be able to come and work with us to support other service users. For some of them, it's been a long journey, and I don't just mean a long journey through the course of their recovery, but just a long journey for us managing to do all of the paperwork that enables us to sign them on as an employee. But for most of them, that's an enormous step forward, moving into employment, and something that we're able to facilitate. And it's been a matter of great pride to welcome them as staff in induction. I was really proud of our staff and those of you who know me very well will be surprised when I say this, at the audience with the Secretary of State that we were granted in December. The then Secretary of State, Jeremy Hunt, gave us 4 days' notice that he was going to come and that we were to provide an audience of staff. And it was about the week before Christmas. We really weren't best pleased. And actually, an awful lot of the staff that morning weren't best pleased to be there either. Although he didn't keep us waiting. We kept him a lot longer than we should have done, and the staff who were waiting for him at 2 other places in the city were still less well pleased. But our staff peppered the Secretary of State with some really searching but very polite questions, and the impression that they gave of a group of staff who understood their services, who cared about mental health services and about their service users, and who understood the intricacies of providing healthcare in the 21st century was enormous. I felt so proud of them. And I want to thank any of them who were here now for that. It made an enormous impression. It's a shame, in a way, he's moved on, because I doubt he'll have passed on to his successor a list of places where he would have been impressed by the staff. But I was very proud that day. And I have been enormously proud of the work that we've done on Reach Out, which is work that we're doing in our secure services to both commission and provide services across our region. We are doing it in partnership. We're doing it in partnership with another NHS trust, South Staffordshire and Shropshire, and with a third sector provider, St Andrews, who in the past have been regarded by many in this organisation as a prime competitor and not to be talked to. But we have overcome our prejudices, and we have overcome all of our reservations, and at board level we have overcome an enormous level of risk that we have taken on financially, on the premise that working together and working outside of all of the restrictions of NHS England, we could provide a much better service for people in our forensic secure care. And that means enabling their recovery and enabling their independence and enabling their discharge. And it's an area of our work that many people pay little attention to, although it's a third of what we do. It's a group of people for whom there is not enormous public sympathy always, but we knew we could do a better job, and we have been very successful in the work that we've done. And in just mentioning that, I want to add one thing to that, which is that the work we do in Reach Out, just like the work that we do in Merit, which I mentioned last year for anyone who was here, which is our partnership with other mental health trusts in the region, wouldn't have happened without the absolute persistence of John, our chief executive, and our other executive colleagues, who have absolutely been champions for mental health services nationally, regionally, and locally, have stood up for our services on behalf of our service users. And you won't find that anywhere in any of their job descriptions, but John and colleagues have been dedicated champions of mental health services and the users of mental health services, and I'm very proud of that as well. So that's enough from me, probably too much from me. I will get on to the formal part of what I need to do. So first of all, I have to take apologies for absence, and I do want to note there are 4 members of the board who are not able to be here. 3 of them are on leave, and one's without transport, so Nerys Williams, Hilary and Brendan and Wahid, that's Hilary Grant, our medical director, Brendan Hayes, our chief operating officer, and Wahid Salim, who's one of our non-execs, are not able to be here. I do also then want to welcome, we've got one new member of the board. I think she was formerly on the workforce when we had the last AGM, but not yet sort of present, as it were. So I'd like to welcome Charlotte, who's in the second row. If you want to just stand up and give a wave. Charlotte joined us in a new post as Director of Strategic Partnerships last summer and has been doing wonderful work with us on that. And then I've got to do the minutes. Now, if you probably haven't sort of delved into your pack, but all of you inside your pack have got a set of minutes from the last meeting. I'm not going to stop while you all read them. I'm going to hope that 1 or 2 have. I'm going to look at Barry. I bet Barry's read them. Are they accurate, Barry? Yes. Okay. This is Barry and Janjit actually sitting next to them. Two of my non-execs whom I know will have read every word on every page of any paper that comes to board and will have spotted anything. Has anybody else in the audience who was here who has looked at them got any objection or any amendment that you think we need to make to them? Good, because I can't remember whether the director and I would get. And then I need to take any declarations of interest that anyone. No, I don't. It's the note. It's for you to note. It's not declarations of interest for you to declare. It's for you to note the declarations of interest that our board declares in our annual report. And just to say to you, it's not only our board who have to declare any interest that they have. All of our governors and our most senior and highly paid staff all have to do the same, so that we're absolutely open and transparent in the work that we do. Okay, I think that's all I need to do. So now I'm handing over to three of our executive directors in turn to produce their parts of their reflections on the past year, starting with the Chief Executive, John Short. John.
Good afternoon. My name's John Short and I'm the Chief Executive of the Trust, and I've been the Chief Executive now for 5.5 years, so this is my 6th AGM. I always start my presentation off each year by saying what a privilege it is to be the Chief Executive of this Trust. And I just wanted to spend a few more minutes on that, because occasionally people come back to me and say, well, you don't really mean that, do you? And I just want to just explain to you why actually I do, and I really mean it. The first thing I want to say is I'm always immensely proud and humbled by the work that we do as a Trust. We in our Trust have 4,000 staff working 365 days of the year, 24 hours a day, delivering care for somewhere just over 65,000 people a year. And for the huge majority of the time, they deliver excellent care. And I spend a lot of my time, some people say I spend too much of my time. I don't think I spend quite enough. I spend a lot of my time going round services, and it's very rare that I come away from a unit not just really humbled by some of the care that I've seen. So it is a real privilege to be the Chief Executive of an organisation. And while the people often point to me and say, you're the Trust, John, because I'm the photograph you'll see on various leaflets and websites, I'm not the Trust. The Trust is made up of the 4,000 staff who work for the Trust, and I think they do a fabulous job. So before I say anything else, can we please stand and applaud the 4,000 staff who work in the Trust? Secondly, as a reflection on the Trust, while I'm immensely proud, I always recognise that we can improve services and get them better. So I'm not blind to the fact that there are times that we don't get things absolutely right and that we don't deliver the very best care all the time. And at the end of my long rambling speech, as I normally do, I'm going to come back to that point and just share with you something that I personally am proud of to a certain extent, but want to say very publicly that we can do more on. The third thing to say, and people often stop me and say, John, you must always be worrying about the money and what's going on in the Trust. Actually, I don't worry about the money. We've actually got an executive director who worries about the money, and he's going to be on after me. Not we've agreed. In relation to that. But money and the money we have as a Trust never actually makes me anxious. We spend just under £250 million worth of taxpayers' money each year. I wish it was more. I wish our lobbying of Jeremy Hunt and Secretary of State and the new Secretary of State was going to produce more money, and it may well do over time. But actually, we can't worry about the total amount of money we get. All we can do is worry about the money that we do get and make certain that we deliver care in the most efficient and effective way that we do. But what does worry me every day, and it is the thing that does keep me awake at night. It is why some of my colleagues get emails at 10, 11 o'clock at night, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning sometimes as well. Is the thing that actually does worry me about the Trust every day is actually the safety of the service users, carers and staff. And that is the bit that, while I'm immensely proud, I recognise that when you become a Chief Executive of a Trust like ours, you accept the responsibility for, and it weighs very heavily on me. But it's something that I think we have to have a continual focus on going forward. So today we're celebrating two things as well as their AGM. We are celebrating the fact that earlier this month we celebrated the 70th anniversary of the NHS. And I've got a copy of the leaflet that was actually put through everybody's door. And I just want to read you about what it actually said. So this leaflet was put through every door in Britain just over 70 years ago. And it says, the National Health Service. Your new National Health Service begins on the 5th of July. What is it, and how do you get it? And it says, we will provide you with all medical, dental and nursing care. Everyone, rich or poor, man, woman or child, can use it or any part of it. There are no charges except for a few special items. There are no insurance qualifications, but it is not a charity. You are all paying for it, mainly as taxpayers, and it will relieve your money worries in times of illness. And a few weeks ago, I was lucky enough with 2 members of staff to go down to Westminster Abbey and celebrate the 70th anniversary. And can I just say, standing in the congregation there, singing hymns as we actually celebrated the NHS, I'm not ashamed to say I was in tears. It really is a great thing, the NHS, and it's a great privilege to actually be part of it. But we're also celebrating last month, again just a few weeks away, the immense contribution of staff from BAME backgrounds. Let's be very clear about this. If we want to be a great NHS and if we want to be a great trust, we must at all times embrace diversity. We must treat our service users, our carers and our staff from BAME backgrounds with the equality that they should expect, and we must at all times have that focus. So, looking back over the last year, as we've done in previous times, and to stop me just rambling on, because I'd end up with a huge list of things I'd want to talk about, we've actually got a short video sketch here of things that we achieved in the year 2017 to 2018. And I just want here now just to focus for a couple of minutes on three things that I think were really key achievements last year from the many things that you saw on the pictures there. The first one, Sue's already mentioned it, and it was Rookery Gardens. And Sue's already touched on the fact that Rookery Gardens that we opened last year was a fantastic piece of work that we're now doing in partnership with Mind. We've actually got new workers providing the care in the centre. It was brilliantly built and converted by the estates team. The reason why we just want to celebrate Rookery Gardens, though, one of the most interesting things that's happened when we opened Rookery Gardens is the number of service users who required attention reduced. So actually providing better care in better environments changed the number of our service users at Rookery Gardens who actually had to be detained. And that for me says a great deal and says to me that we have to keep striving for the best environment and the best staff, because that's how we really can deliver much better care. Secondly, something that isn't on the slide that I was very proud of for last year, and that was the fact that we coped with winter. You're all sat there fanning yourselves at the moment. Just want to remind you that actually I last saw snow in mid-Wales on I think it was the 12th of April I last saw snow, which is just over 3 months ago. We did have a really bad winter that some of you remember. The reason why I was immensely proud and want to talk about the achievements, we kept all of our services open 365 days of the year, 24 hours a day, despite the fact that we had some staff who couldn't get home, some staff who had to be put up and cared for in some of our buildings, some staff who had to work double shifts and excessive hours. And while we never planned to do that, and we put in as many contingencies as we could, we coped really well with winter. And that again said to me, we've got a group of staff and services really focused on providing best care. And finally, in terms of achievements, there's a photograph here of Kat. Each year, as a trust, and one of the very strange things that you either know or don't know about one of my roles as a chief executive, I get written to about twice a year by, I don't know if it's the Queen's office or something. It's the Queen. Queen writes to me twice a year and says, do you have any staff who you think have done exceptionally well, and you'd like to nominate either to come to one of my garden parties or receive an award from me? And we do put forward every year staff who've done exceptionally well through our quality awards each year. So last year, Fitzmichael, two years ago, we nominated Fitzmichael at one of our award ceremonies, and he actually went on to meet the Queen personally, and she thanked him personally for his contribution to the NHS. And I'm delighted that this year, that we were able to build on the quality awards from last year. We nominated Kat for an award, and in early June, she was not nominated for an MBE. And I think it says a great deal about our trust that actually we do recognise the value and the contribution our staffs make, and we do nominate them nationally, and they go on to receive awards. Now, Kat isn't here today. I don't think. I haven't seen her. She's currently off on maternity leave, but she's going to come back to the trust at some point in the future. So if you see her, just say, well done from all of us. So what are our challenges going forward? Well, one of the challenges is we have to improve the quality of our services. Even if we'd had outstandingly brilliant from CQC, as a chief executive, I still think there would be more that we can do. But our formal rating from CQC remains improvement required, despite the fact that we did brilliantly in the solar service. And actually, if you look at our ratings as you go out, you'll actually see as a trust we're rated well led and good for all, and we're all greens across the board, but we still haven't actually demonstrated that we deliver the care that we think we deliver and we need to deliver to the CQC. And that's going to be a challenge going forward into this year. So secondly, there is always the continuing challenge, as I've already said, about the things that worry me in relation to safety. And I'm under strict instructions from Sue not to talk too much about this, because she says, I often stand up here in the AGM, I talk about that, and she comes up afterwards and says, well, he said it all already. So I'm not going to say too much, except that although we've done well this year in relation to staff assaults, we've seen a reduction in the number of staff assaults. We've also seen a reduction in the number of our patients who need to be restrained. Those numbers are still too high, and we need to reduce them. we need to be seeing a reduction year on year. We're not going to set a target that says, here's a magic number, because ideally we never have any member of staff assaulted, and ideally we'd never have to restrain a service user. But our commitment is we need to be reducing those numbers year on year, and that is a challenge going forward and will remain one. And the final thing we put up there, I think the biggest challenge for us as a trust, I've already said that we're not likely to get huge amounts of extra money, and even if the government came back and rather than give us 3.4%, which is the increase for next year, gave us 10.9%, the bottom line is the demand for mental health services is going to outstrip the money. If you just look at the evidence over the last few years, the number of people who feel overwhelmed and in mental distress in our communities continues to grow. So one of the things we have to do is, yes, we have to be campaigning for funding, but then we need to stop doing the campaigning and make sure that what we do is focus on how we respond as best as we can in relation to the demand. That means we do need to have a continued focus on our recruitment of staff, on staff retention, on staff training. We do need to have a continued focus on team development so that actually we have strong, sustainable teams going forward. We have to maintain our commitment for the use of technology. Whether we like it or not, we're going to have to use technology more just to cope with a huge increase in the number of people who are going to require our services going forward. So we will have that real commitment. And there's something written on the board there called quality improvement. And one of the things we're going to do for this year is actually have a real focus. I think we're starting this in September, on how do we ensure that all of our teams, how do all of our 4,000 staff feel involved in doing those quality improvements and meeting those demands? Because it cannot be right that just a few people have bright ideas. And so people like Vanessa at the back and Mary at the back and Derek are brilliant. I'm an associate director, just to keep them awake, by the way, at the back. Just so we're not looking to our senior managers to say, well, what's the next great idea? What do we need to do to respond? We need to make sure that we involve all our 4,000 staff in doing that. So you will hear next year the feedback in terms of how well we're doing on quality improvement, but the ultimate test is how do we get those 4,000 staff all working together and delivering the care for the increasing demand that we're faced with. I've got 2 slides before I get to the end, so Sue's getting a little bit anxious now about my timing, but I promised to go on relatively quickly. The second to last thing I want to talk about is partnerships. Sue's already talked about the partnerships we're proud of, the Merit and Reach Out partnerships, which I'm going to come back to in a minute. The fact that we've got Charlotte, we've actually got a new executive director just focused on partnerships. But if you look at that issue of demand, and I've already talked about how we as a trust respond to the demand, the only way we're really going to deal with that increased demand is by working with others. So we need to get consistency of service and the most efficient and effective we can across our 4,000 staff. And then we need to look outside of our trust and think, who else can help us? Who can we help and who can we learn from in delivering that great care across the board? Because we can't do it on our own. And one thing I want to say, which I'm actually probably proudest of in relation to last year, is Merit. So Merit, officially, the programme has finished. We don't get any more funding for Merit, but we're working together. But the reason why I'm really immensely proud of Merit is because, very tragically, in March 2013, a young girl called Christina Edkins was killed on a number 9 bus on the Hagley Road. We had an internal review, we've had external reviews, and all those reviews came back and said, while that death was not preventable, you could have done more by working with other trusts. You could have ensured that actually the man who killed Christina Edkins was known about by other services. Now, we haven't been in contact with the Edkins family for a number of years. They don't want contact with us, but we gave them a very clear commitment and said, we will learn the lessons. And the reason why I'm immensely proud of Merit is because last year we did actually achieve the position of all 4 trusts in the West Midlands Combined Authority now share their records. So if you are a vulnerable or at-risk service user and you pop up in another service, we'll know about you and we'll be able to link you back to that care. And that, in a very small way, might just make somebody else on a number 9 bus much safer. And I'm immensely proud that we've done that. And for me, that shows the real commitment that we've got as a trust to learning the lessons. but also a real commitment that we've got in relation to and to partnerships. So the other partnerships we're involved in, we are working, as Sue said, with other partners in relation to secure services. I spend most of my time, as does Charlotte now, knocking on doors, saying we want to bash these doors down, please. So whenever we come across providers or commissioners or local authorities or any other agency who says, well, we don't really want to work with you, but we're very supportive of mental health, I spend most of my time now bashing doors down and say, if you're going to be supportive, you need to come and work with us, because only working with us will we actually deliver the very best care. And I think that real commitment to the partnerships, I think over time, along with our staff and what we do internally, will ensure that we are seen to be delivering great care across the board. And then finally, I want to come back to this issue of the NHS's birthday. And I did say at the very beginning, I'd come back to something that I actually think we're still not doing well enough. So it is a time to celebrate the NHS being 70. Some of you know, I think the NHS is a fantastic organisation. I can't tell you how proud I am to have spent a good part of my working career in the NHS and be a chief executive in that. And I sometimes still sit on the train on the way home with a little warm glow thinking, I'm glad I work for the NHS and not anybody else, because they're all looking sad. And I'm just I'm sitting there with a slight glow saying, actually, we made a difference today in relation to our care. But there is something, and particularly in recognising of the Windrush celebrations that we've talked about, that I'm still not happy about, and I still think we have to make a difference on. I went to a meeting a few months ago, and it was organised by NHS England nationally, and they gave us back the figures for all the trusts in the Midlands, that's East Midlands and West Midlands, on how well trusts do when they are recruiting black staff. So I'm not going to refer to BAME staff, I'm going to be very blunt and probably politically incorrect here, but when we're recruiting black staff and how well we do when we're actually comparing ourselves with how often black staff get disciplined compared with non-black staff. And whilst we are seen to be the best performing trust in the Midlands, we still haven't cracked that completely. So the bit that I want us to go forward and think about going into the year ahead is, yes, let's celebrate, but let's recognise there are still some staff in our trust who are not given equal access to jobs, who sometimes are still disciplined inappropriately, and we must do something more about that. Because to be a really great trust, we have to embrace diversity and actually recognise everybody's contributions to the trust. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, just need to say this. Just hang on a sec. No, I can't have them on the telly. No, they're pretty quiet at the minute. No, they're all right. No, I can't tell them that one. Can't tell them that one. Yeah, I've put the bins out. It's all right. It's all sorted. Yeah, love you lots. Love you lots. Brendan passes on his regards. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about the financial performance, so it's the time to go to sleep, but I'll talk about why financial performance is important. These are the things I'm going to be covering today. So what does success look like? What does that mean? How did we do? What the future looks like and what that means for us. So it's important to recognise it's not an end in itself, and it can't be that. Unless you're doing stuff with the money and with the profit, you're wasting your time and not being true to what you need to do. But if you have got good performance, and that's both financial and operational, it reassures regulators, gives us room to invest and keeps us in the driving seat so we can do what we need to do. And that's a good place to be. This trust has got a good track record financially and performance-wise. That means that we can do a lot of really good stuff. And most of all, it means that we can concentrate on quality. So in terms of how you measure this, there's a number of measures in here. So the most important one, the sustainable annual surplus. How much do we underspend against the money that we get? Now, it's quite complicated in terms of this because of what the NHS improvement's done. They take a load of money off you and then give it you back when you do well. So in terms of what we do, we generate an operating surplus of £1 million. That was against a plan for the year of £500,000. As a result of doing that, NHS improvement then gives us a further £4 million. Then we've also got a technical valuation improvement of another 4 million. So actually, we've got an overall surplus of 9 million, but it's not real money in some cases. When we were setting the plan for the next year, the board was very, very clear. We don't want to generate surpluses for other organisations and other parts of the country. We want to spend all the money that we've got. So we set, in terms of the plan for this year, a break-even position. If we achieve that, we do get the same sort of money coming from the centre. So there's advantages in doing this, but it's important to recognise the 9 million that we get, the reported figure that's in the annual report and accounts, doesn't reflect the reality of what it's like on the ground, but we're in a sustainable position. It's important also we've got cash in the bank so we can afford to invest in bricks and mortar developments and services. End of the year was 17.5 million, which is a good place to be. Said already about regulators, it's important that they consider us low risk, and we're not on the radar. There's no concerns from NHS improvement. We know what the rating is from CQC, but we're not considered a high-risk organisation. And that means that we can invest in developments and improvements, and we spent, all told, £8 million over the last year. Just briefly on the single oversight framework, this is how NHS improvement rates us in terms of financial risks. So this is on a 1 to 4 scoring, with 1 being the best and 4 being the worst. We scored 2 for the overall position, and that's a good place to be. So it's part of reassuring the regulators you're actually okay. I will say this, you don't really need to worry about this. This is my problem and thinking about, but I would make sure people are aware of what it means when we're going off track so we can do something about it, but it's a good result. So what does the future look like? I think John's already mentioned some of this. NHS finances continue to be tight, and they always will be. We do need to continue delivering significant savings, although it's fair to say that what we're doing this year, as per the discussion with the board, we set significantly lower targets than we had previous years. In the last 2 or 3 years, I think we've been setting targets of 12 to 15 million, and you can't do that on an ongoing basis. It's significant. We're able to set significantly lower figures this year, so we're only asking in terms of the services and the central people, 3.5 million out of that. There's other things that we're doing technically, but it's gone from 15 to 12 million right down to 3.6. It does mean that we can take some of the pressure off people. We know that services are really pushed. We know, and John's again mentioned this, so you've taken all my thunder, thanks John. So increasing need for partnership working, we have to do this with others. You can't do it in isolation. By working with others, you make better use of the money, collectively working together. So that's both across the SDP locally, with Reach Out and Merit partners, and also with others. And we need to be seen to be good to do business with, because it's useful to work together. We can do much more. We can mobilise what we've got between us. And it's also important that we exploit the benefits from technology. We are a global digital exemplar, but in many cases, staff will look at, well, my kit doesn't work, it doesn't actually do what I need it to do. So we've got to do both of these, both the top level strategic things and look at pushing the boundaries. We've also got to give people the tools to do the job. And digital organisation means taking the best of technology, turning it into things that help us on the ground. There are things that we've done over this last year around therapeutic observation apps. So one of the first trusts in the country to do giving services to people so that it's easier to actually monitor people and make sure they're okay. And that's what we need to do much more of. So rather than answer the call from the centre and supporting what they ask us to do, how do we use money to actually make a difference to people on the ground? So what does that all mean for us? Well, summarising it, what I've already said really, we have got a strong financial track record, cash in the bank, considered low risk and in charge of our own destiny. That means we can do more of what we really want to do. But we have to remain watchful. We have to make sure we retain that. We do get benefits from it, but it's important that we use the funds that we've got and the people that we work alongside wisely to get the best outcomes. Just if you do want further information around it, you can go through and contact us for the full details, but I wouldn't urge people to, because this is a boring document in terms of it. What we do try and do is do the best that we can, but we're prescribed and told how to present things. We have to discharge that, but we also have to make information meaningful and understandable for people, so they understand what we're saying. It makes a difference. Thanks very much.
You left one of the bins.
Not now.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Sue Hartley. I think I know most of you in the room, and I'm the Executive Director of Nursing, and I am into my 5th year here. Are you all warm enough? Because I can tell you, if I was a snowman, I'd be a size 8. Oh. I also feel slightly anxious. I always am slightly anxious before I speak, but every year, the acts before me get better and better, and I'm always on last. So I thank John for doing some of my presentation, and from my other colleagues for actually presenting so beautifully. It is my privilege, really, to report back to you on the work that all of you, of your staff, service users, carers, governors, have done around the quality of services that we provide across Birmingham and Solihull. So some of this is a little bit formal, but we'll do it in language which I understand, which hopefully is language which everybody else understands. So for those of you that work for us, I don't need to tell you what this is, but for those of you that don't, what you should expect from this organisation is that we put quality at the heart of everything. And we define that in 3 ways. We say, are we safe? Are we effective? And do we give a good experience? So we'll talk a little bit later and more about our safety of services. We'll talk a little bit about effectiveness and experience. And when I do the trust induction, I have to say, and I'll repeat it today, because I think it's important, that if I'm a member of the public coming to the service for the first time as a service user, I would naturally expect the service I receive to be safe. As if you would be going for an operation in a hospital. You might have some anxiety, but you would expect service to be safe. You would expect the choice of treatments and the range of treatments to be effective. But actually, how you treat me is what will live with me forever. My experience, my family's experience. And whilst I wouldn't advocate we do anything unsafely, but we will talk about the areas we're trying to improve, or ineffectively, if you treat people well, with dignity, respect, compassion and openness, people will work with you and their experience will be taken forward in a positive light. So this is really, really important. As I say, for all of you that work for us, this is stuff that you do every day. So what is a quality account? Very briefly, it's a document a bit like the stuff Dave was talking about for the regulator that we are required to do. It brings everything together around our commitment of quality of care that we provide for everybody. And it's part of the annual report and annual accounts, which you'll be able to download should you wish to read the absolute detail. And believe me, there's plenty of it. I think it's more helpful, really, if we just look back together about how we've done over the last year. And on the first domain, keeping people safe, John and others have already mentioned that in our CQC inspection, we remain in this domain to require some improvement, and we agree that we do. And on these key areas, we've made some improvements and we have some challenges. So it's great that our harm levels have reduced down to 23% compared to a national average of 35%. But you wouldn't want to be in the 23%, so we have to keep going. Our service users who don't return from their Section 17 leave, so that's when somebody who's been detained under the Mental Health Act through a clinical discussion with the service user and their carers, is deemed to be able to, and well enough to take some leave. We had an issue previously where people were not returning within the time frame that had been set for them, and that presents a massive safety risk. You know, it's okay. That person might have just, I don't know, popped to the shop for a bit longer, gone to feed the cat when they hadn't expected to. There'll be a whole range of reasons, but sometimes they don't. So we, i.e. the clinical teams in this instance, have worked really, really hard to reduce that so that we're keeping people safer. John's already spoken about restraint. I won't labour the point, and he's absolutely right. We need to be mindful about that. We need to work more closely with service users and carers, and I will keep saying and carers, to understand about how best to support people who have got escalated anxieties at the point of their illness and what the messages are for them to keep them and to manage them safely, accepting that in safety terms there are times where restraint is absolutely appropriate. John's mentioned earlier the safety of our staff and everybody else is paramount, and we have in this year introduced a new security policy for the organisation which is explicitly different from the clinical search policy. The CQC did find some confusion in their view about how we applied safety in this domain, and as a board we took that very seriously, and we did a huge engagement piece with service users and our staff to make sure that we now have two policies that enable us to give confidence that we're delivering a safe service. So where service users through their clinical illness require a search, and that's very specific around their clinical illness, that's done by clinical teams. But everybody currently approaching and entering any of our inpatient units will see at the front desk somebody who is standing by a lectern like I am with a scanning device that looks like an airport or any other major arena that you go to, whose job is to ask all of us, whether we're a service user, a member of staff or otherwise, whether we're safe enough to enter. And if we want to, we offer our bag for a search if we need to. And that's really, really important. And whilst that's been a major thing for the organisation, I have to say that I am really proud that, to my knowledge, we haven't had a lot of pushback. So people were very anxious, saying, oh, it's going to be like a prison. It's absolutely not about that. And those people performing those roles have had mental health awareness training, absolutely understand the anxiety of some people coming. But really, I think everybody working together understands it's really, really important that we understand we unfortunately live in a city and society where it isn't always safe. And we have lots of evidence where we have retrieved weapons, and I talk from weapons, from knives, etc., right down to implements, for example, screwdrivers that could indeed endanger or threaten life. So we've seen a reduction of assaults on staff in inpatient wards this year. There's a lot of work being led by the Deputy Medical Director around least restrictive practice and the positive and proactive care group. That's beginning to get traction. However, we haven't seen that on patient-to-patient assaults, so that's work for the future. In terms of reducing the number of deaths, for anybody in the public here, I want to give assurance this is something that we should always be doing. It's a national focus that the acute hospitals have been doing, well, certainly since I've been in a previous organisation over probably 10 years. And what they do, quite rightly, is ask organisations to learn from any areas that we need to. As John had mentioned earlier about the serious incident that happened on the number 9 bus, we should review cases when people die and look for key themes of where we may need to learn lessons. The national directive is that we review inpatient deaths, but this organisation has gone a step further, and it has a process of review for people who may die on our caseloads who have been in contact with the service within 6 months. And out of the whole 712, in 8 cases, we feel there were other things we could have done to support that family and individual more. And the key theme coming out of that, for all of you who are working in clinical areas, it is listening and working with carers and families. It's absolutely not missing every single opportunity to elucidate as much information as you've got to help that person who is often very unwell and unable to advocate effectively for themselves in isolation, to work as a team. And we see it done brilliantly every day, but we need to be consistent in that. The next one around improving physical health, again, all of you know now, it's an old adage, you know, there is no health without physical and mental health. I stand in front of you today as a whole person with my mental health and my physical health, and we as an organisation need to see the person in that. So we've had some great improvements around, and I know it sounds like recording, but if you don't start with a measure, you don't know whether you're getting better or not. And again, so we're doing much, much better around assessing people when they're first with us about whether they may be diabetic or have coronary heart disease and how we help them, whether they may have indeed a weight issue. I'm back to the snowman now, I'm size 6, and how we support them. And again, I'm really, really proud to say in this organisation, we do offer lots of support. So our health trainers, our physios, our dietitians, there's lots of support available for service users here. We have seen the number of falls resulting in serious harm reduce, or the number of actual falls has increased slightly. So there's a big piece of work to continue around that, but actually those suffering severe harm as a result of falls has reduced, and for me that is critically important. Being caring and responsive. So again, I'm delighted to say that we have extended our Recovery College, which is evaluating extremely well and is absolutely an integrated piece of this organisation's fabric, to Solihull, where that is working well now. And we're beginning work alongside Charlotte and the wider community and our commissioners to look at what recovery looks like across the wider system. So that's really, really positive. And we've started our carers assessment project. What a dry word. It's not a project. It is to ensure that clinically it's a consistent way of working every single time, to give you, if you're a clinician, the confidence, the service user and the carer that we're doing everything together. And if we don't start by assessing the need with carers, then really we're starting in the wrong place. And I would particularly like to thank Chris Mansell for the work that he took on. He's very senior in our Meriden programme, which is looks after family behavioural therapy and family training. And Chris, probably would say, got his arm bent to say, could he come and help us with this? But actually, under the guidance of others, Chris has done a tremendous job, and we're going to continue working on that. And again, thank you particularly to our carer governors who are tireless in this subject. And along with when I first started, why isn't there recovery? I still hear we need to get better at carers, and we're doing our best, and we will keep going on that. We need to improve, again, around our communications with GPs. Some of that's about systems, some of that's about coordination, and we need to improve further on our community health survey. We didn't improve quite as much as we'd like to have done in the areas of people knowing who to call in a crisis on a question that was being asked. So I won't be too much longer. The rest is really very important around reporting. And again, if you don't measure what you're doing, you don't know if you're getting better. And Dave has developed a really helpful integrated performance report, which hopefully next year we'll be able to demonstrate more positively to you in action, which helps us see at the earliest oversight areas that might need some support or areas that we can celebrate around the whole range of indicators, whether that's people's caseloads, their finance, their HR, vacancies, etc. And John mentioned earlier our journey to quality improvement. We are going to be working with an organisation called the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, who are internationally known for the work in healthcare improvement. And I'm really proud that this organisation is taking that opportunity, because it gives back the power and the choice to the organisation, all 4,000 of us, to make the difference in a framework by which you'll be able to deliver it. Of course, I'm co-leading that with Hilary, so I would be championing it, wouldn't I? So the quality goals for 18-19, that we will continue to develop and implement a clinically driven improvement programme. So that doesn't mean to say it's just doctors, nurses, physios, psychologists. That's not what it means. It means having the person and their family thinking about the clinical need. And all of you in this room, I see many of you who aren't clinicians, but I can say with confidence, of all of you I know and the roles you do, I can see where each of your roles links to quality improvement and outcomes for service users, whether you're in the estates department or the comms department. I choose those two people because they caught my eye. We will continue to provide services that ensure that your mental and physical health needs are assessed and given equal consideration, and that's continuing the work we've already started. We'll continue the work around our mortality reviews to make sure that the learning that comes out is embedded back into practice, and the work around the least restrictive practice, particularly around restraint and assault, and promoting co-production with family carers and recovery at the heart of everything that we do. Finally, I would just like to, along with John and others, one, thank all of you, 4,000 people, but two, as an exec director, but as the director of nursing for many professions that I lead, to offer my thanks to my wonderful BAME colleagues and my ongoing commitment that we must improve, and that I am here in my role to make sure we do, and that, as you know, I operate an open door policy. For those of you, whoever in the room, that feels that I can be of any assistance, please, please keep in contact with me. But thank you all very much indeed.
Okay, we have an opportunity for questions on anything that you've heard or anything else that interests you that you haven't heard about. Because we're being streamed, we will want to use mics, so please wait. If you want to ask a question for a mic to get to you, we've got two somewhere in the room. I can see one. Where's the other one? There's one. Is there another one? Oh, there. Oh, that's a mic. Okay. There's a lady on the second row there. Is there anyone else while we're getting a... Right, you'll be next then.
This is Gwen. I would like to see the National Health legalise cannabis for things such as epilepsy. They've had some on trial and they're very successful. But because the drug is illegal in this country, a lot of people have difficulty to get it. They really need it, and it can be a life-saving procedure. I hope they have success with legalising it.
Thanks for that. We'll take it as a comment. There'll probably be several in the room who would agree, but as a trust we can't take a stance on that. But thanks for that as a comment. The question over there? No, it was the further back, then we'll come forward again.
Okay. All right, I wanted to say I'm very proud of the Trust for being so honest about the things that perhaps haven't improved as much as we would like them to improve. I think this is excellent that people are telling the truth. But there is one thing I've got an issue with, and that's what is a crisis? How do you respond to a crisis? Is a crisis just when somebody feels so bad that they're going to kill themselves, or is showing some sort of psychotic or dangerous behavior? And I would like to see a lot more provision for people like myself who go through very negative states of mind and really need some help and support, whether or not we're about to commit suicide or be hospitalized. And therefore, I want to say something about crisis cafes, and the one that Mind is currently running for a little while longer up at Beechcroft. And I would like to see these. I'm also involved in a research project where we are finding these provisions in other parts of the country. And I would really like to see Birmingham and Solihull Mental Health Foundation Trust providing some support for the idea of crisis cafes and the provision of several of them in different parts of the city.
Okay, thank you for that. You're actually pushing at an open door. We agree that they can be useful as part of a range of what we're doing. I'll get Sue to comment on the crisis cafes, but actually on John's presentation, I think it was John's, you saw the RAID Plus symbol. The whole of the point of the RAID Plus work is to help us to identify people before they get to crisis. So the whole point of that is for us to invest in finding ways of predicting a crisis about to happen and intervening earlier. But on the crisis cafes, Sue, can you just make comments on what we're doing?
Thank you, Barbara, for your challenge. Always very helpful and very correct. The first question you asked about what is a crisis, and actually you very cleverly answered the question yourself. So for those that missed the point, Crisis is what the individual sees as a crisis, and how the system and the people working with the individual identifies what helps that person when they're in crisis. Barbara is absolutely right. My crisis might be very, very different to Barbara's and to everybody else's. And that's why we go back to doing the work with carers assessments, planning with the individual about what works for them. The evaluation is about to go on of the Crisis Cafe up in the north. I've heard nothing but positive things, Barbara. I absolutely agree. I know we've got commissioners in the room as well, and we are working in partnership, so it isn't just about Birmingham and Solihull Mental Health Trust, and I think that's right. I think that partners offer a range of different opportunities for people, and I'm really hopeful that that will continue. And there's been one for some time in Solihull as well. So yes, so in both parts of our boroughs at the moment, we've got them, and we would hope that we can continue, but we need to work around the evaluation and with our other partners and commissioners about that, but that's certainly the plan. Thank you.
It's Rose Harris, MBE. I've been caring for about 25 years. 4 adults now, 3 adults, 2 in hospital. And I noticed on this thing when you put all the people up, nothing was mentioned about volunteers. Now, I know at the QE we have over 1,000 volunteers, and there must be about 10,000 volunteers, even if they're only doing a couple of hours a month. No mention was made of that, and I think that would be nice just to put the number of roughly the number of volunteers we've got, and also backroom staff like cleaners and maintenance staff and the security staff and all that. They never get a mention. Now, without the cleaners, that you wouldn't be able to do an operation, because to me it's just as not as vital as a nurse, but it's still vital, and I think they need to be mentioned. Now, the one hospital 2 of the hospitals that my son was in, he was transferred, they were excellent. They involved me as a carer. And the other 2 hospitals, I was just a nobody. They didn't tell me anything. They didn't want me to go to tribunal. They didn't even give me a drink. And one was 158 miles away from my home. And I think people with mental health or people in a long-term hospital or a very long-term, the carers or the parents and that should have the right to, like the other people with other illnesses, to say, right, we don't want our people miles away from home. 1, we can't afford to visit them. 2, they don't get any visitors. They're miserable and unhappy, a lot of them, and I think they should have the right. And I also think in 2018, today, a person in a long-term hospital, unless there is a reason why, like dementia or something, they can't operate it, should be given a plain, simple mobile phone, because very often when I phone up the hospital, they've got 2 phones, they're engaged, they're busy, you can't get through, and my sons can't phone me. And I think in 2018, it's silly, especially when they come out, because some of them won't know what modern technology is. Some of them don't know how to go on a bus, because they don't know nowadays you don't need change and you need a travel card and that. And I think some of them need to be trained in the outside world for when they come out, because they get lost. And what happens? They return back into the community again, which costs people money. And to me, it's silly.
Thank you very much. You actually raised 4 really important points there. So for the first thing that you raised, I'm going to say, I'm sorry, you're right. We didn't mention volunteers. We have had a volunteer stand in the back, so we have been very actively trying to recruit more people to be volunteers and to find more work for volunteers to do. But you're right, we didn't acknowledge them in our presentations. So through your medium, I will do that now and say, you know, the many people we have who volunteer for us, we are very grateful for. They do a great job. First and foremost among them, of course, our governors, who all do what they do out of their interest in the trust. So that was the first thing you mentioned. Then you said we hadn't mentioned backroom staff. I don't think that's quite as fair, because actually the estate staff were mentioned, so were the IT staff in the work that they do. But you're right again that those are very important to what we do. At induction every fortnight, Fahim and I meet people, and we always say, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Fahim always he has a line that says, people say to me, I'm only a cleaner, and nobody's only anything in this trust. Everybody has an important role to do. So I agree with you. Then you raised the question of out of area placements. And you also then mentioned people being able to use technology. Now, the second is rather more, they're both complicated. John, do you want to say something about the position on out-of-area beds? Because we agree people shouldn't be, but that it's not as easy to get from agreeing that people ought to be close to home to having the provision for them to all be there.
I mean, I mentioned in my presentation, it's the issue of demand. And as a trust, it's one of the things that we think we're responding reasonably well to. But as we sit here today, I mean, I looked at the figures for this morning. I'm looking at Mary in the background. I think our figure this morning was it 17? 15. It was 15 this morning of people who are in acute beds who are outside of area. And when we look at our secure services and rehabilitation services, we know across the West Midlands there are something like 140 people who are from the West Midlands who are not cared for in the West Midlands. So we aren't trying to disguise that for figures. As I stand here today, and a number of our patients are in those 140 for the whole region, so my guess is we've probably got about 30 to 40 people who ought to be cared for in Birmingham and Solihull who are currently cared for around the country. We're doing what we can about that. I don't think we'll ever get that figure to zero, though, because I think there will be some people whose care will be so specialised, even though, as you quite rightly say, they have a right to be treated locally. I don't know that we'll ever get to the position of being able to say everybody can be cared for locally. But we're working in relation to the acute beds with our merit partners and others in relation to getting those back. And one of the real pieces of work we're doing in relation to reach out, I know is slightly different because it's about forensic patients. One of the aims of working together with the reach out partners is actually to reduce that figure of 140 to zero as fast as we can. But as we stand here today, I recognise that's one of the things. You know, I said it earlier about there are some things we just have to recognise we don't do as well as we could. I think that issue of people being treated outside of our patch is one of the things we just need to hold our hands up and say we still haven't got it quite right. Because you're absolutely right. Being 100, I think you said 158 was a figure you gave us. If you're 158 miles away from home, that's a long way. And the thing you need to sometimes remind people who don't know what that means is, what would you feel like if someone turned around tomorrow and said, you can't live at home, you've got to be 158 miles away? Actually, that's something that none of us would regard as acceptable, and we shouldn't do so for NHS patients. So apologies, we're not there yet. I think we need to do that. Your very practical suggestion, though, of a mobile phone, I'm going to write down. Interestingly, as a trust, we do now give, be careful I advertise this too much, but we do actually give some of our service users mobile phones now, particularly in some of the assertive outreach teams, because it's a way of actually having people be in contact with us, because actually paying for someone to have a £10 mobile phone and paying for paying for them to have coverage on that is a lot cheaper in trying to find and talk to people than some of the expensive things we have with nurses and others driving around the patch. So I'm going to take that away as something that we need to look at. It doesn't cost a great deal of money in the scheme of things, but it can make a huge difference.
Okay, I wasn't... Oh, there's one more hand at the back. Then that will be the last... Okay, two. Okay, if you can be brief to make them questions, that would help. We're running a long way behind time, but you know, I'll be here as long as it takes. Other people may find that they need to get away. Okay.
I'll be very brief. I won't rabble on.
Yes.
Are you content with the service we have today? And if the finance is available by the government, what improvements would you like to see?
Okay. Can you do that? Yes. John wants to answer that.
Improvements I'd like to see. First thing is I personally would like to see the funding commitments given over a long period of time. And I'll be politically incorrect here. I want all the parties to agree what that funding should be and give us a real commitment over the next 10 years. And the reason why I ask for that is it takes more than 10 years to train a doctor. So getting an extra bit of money today or tomorrow won't make a difference long term. So firstly, I think it's extra money, but it's a real commitment, and we don't see it change by who gets elected. I'd like to see all of Parliament come together, make a parliamentary decision, and give a commitment to funding. Secondly, I think with the extra money that we have, I think we need to be looking at three things. Firstly, it's staff training. And the way that we remunerate staff. Our staff in the NHS are about to get a pay rise. That's been a commitment over the next 3 years. But again, our staff need to know that they are going to be well paid and well rewarded for the jobs that they do. Secondly, I think we need to spend some money on technology. I think the NHS is still a little bit too in the dark ages. I think there are some things that we can do to better support people. And then thirdly, I think we need to sit down, because even if we have that amount of money, there'll still be that amount of things that people want us to do. I think we need to sit down very quickly, have a conversation and decide where we're going to prioritise and make sure we deliver on our commitments. One of them has to be the issue of the inpatient care that Rose was mentioning earlier. We still have too many of our patients in Birmingham, services in Birmingham, being cared for outside of the patch, and that's unacceptable. So for me, it's commitment, long-term funding. It's putting it on into staff and recognising that staff, you've got to reward staff and pay them well for what they're doing. Technology, and then I think we just need an honest conversation that says we're never going to have enough money to do everything. So can we agree on the top three things, and then can you hold us accountable in delivering those?
So the basic answer to the first half of the question was no. We're never content with where we are, because we can always see how we could do better. The thing I'd add to John's list is that actually, to make things better for our services, we need investment elsewhere, and we really need money put back into social care that's been cut out of it over the last 4 or 5 years, because that's had a dramatic impact on our service users, on their families, and on our staff's ability to provide them with the support that they need. Right, final question.
Yeah, my name is Mustaq Mirza. I'm service user and service user governor. Mine is question and comment and compliment today. I only been, this is my fourth, so I'm from John and Sue. I'm low below, as attending the AGM. But 2 years ago, I asked the question, because the Birmingham University done research in the mental health, serious mental health care, the care plan. There was, I asked John said they had 80%. Now I got information, and John have improved over 85%. And when you focus something, start growing bigger, I'm sure John and the manager and the team of it, you can improve better. So that's a compliment to the team. Another question I've been informed today, out of 12 trusts, we came top. And John's input was there. I noticed, and somebody informed. One of the psychologists advised me. He said, if you want to transform your life, start with a little thing. Start cleaning your room. Just little thing. Make your bed. And we came on a top on cleanness. And to me, it's a power. When you have a clean thing, it's always good. Out of 12 trust, we came on the 100%, so something to celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, lovely to end that with a compliment. We're now going to have a presentation from our lead governor and is Barbara, yes, and our company secretary on membership engagement and governor involvement activity. We are running late. Apologies for that, but this is an important topic, so hope you'll enjoy it.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to see you all here today. I'm going to very quickly start my slides. My name's Barbara, and I'm Company Secretary here. And I just wanted to talk to you about our vision for engaging with our Foundation Trust membership. Quick slide about our vision. We very much want to be leaders in our field on this subject, and we really want to engage our members and governors and drive forward the issues that are affecting everyone at the moment, such as parity of esteem for mental health care and reducing stigma and supporting the Trust with its ambitions. Our membership amounts to about 12,600 at the moment, and really I think our focus at the moment on is engaging and recruiting more service users and carers to our membership structure. Here's a quick slide showing where most of our members are focused, which is very illuminating. I didn't mean that sarcastic, I really didn't. These are the important two slides. I'm racing through these. Our plans for 2018-2019 are that we really need to grow our membership numbers and focus on our service users and family and areas of underrepresentation. To do that, we're formulating our membership engagement strategy, and we really would welcome your views on how we can do this. We've already had one fantastic session that a variety of people attended, and we've got some really good ideas from that. We'll be running some more of those, but again, if any of you have any comments or suggestions about our engagement strategy, those would be very much gratefully received. The future. We have a vision of a membership where we can exchange views and take things from our membership and also give things back to our membership. We really want to grow potential pool of governors and volunteers and service users representatives, and we want to use our membership to promote our community initiatives. We recognise, though, that if we're asking you to do that as a membership, we need to give something back. And again, our engagement workshops really are focusing on the offer that we can make to you as members and what we can give back to you for helping us. So that's our vision for the future and our strategy. We very much welcome any comments that you have on that. I'm now going to hand over to Fahim, who's going to give an introduction to the Governor video, which will be, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Barbara. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Fahim. I'm the Trust Service User and Lead Governor. And I didn't want to say this before Barbara started, because I didn't want to get nervous, but do you realise if you were here last year, I had another different partner, and the year before that I had a different partner, and I've got a different partner now, so this is a bit of a poison chalice now. So
I hope I'm there next
year. I hope what's going to happen next year, yeah. So before we start the video, I'd just like to say that I came into our Council of Governor meeting in May last year, and as soon as I walked in, Louise Butler, our head of communication, said, Fahim, you need to go upstairs. We're making a video of the governors, which we're going to play at the AGM. I wasn't having a very good time at that moment. I mean, I was having a bad hair day, you know, and I had an abscess which was infected, and so my mouth was swollen on one side. And I saw the video at our last meeting a week ago, and I wasn't, last week, yeah, and I wasn't very happy with it. And I said to Louise yesterday, I said, can you please cut me out of that? But she said no, so the video's there, but bear in mind, I mean, I'm warning you now, it's worse than XXX, right? So if you want to leave the room, you can, okay? But here's the video of what some of our governors have been doing.
I'm Hazel Kench and I'm Public Governor for Solihull.
My name's Peter Brown. I've been a governor for Solihull service users for many years now.
I'm Maureen Johnson. I'm Carer Governor.
My name's Sean Russell. I'm the Director for the West Midlands Mental Health Commission, so I work with the Combined Authority, but I'm also a Superintendent within West Midlands Police. I'm a stakeholder governor.
My name's Maureen Smoikis. I'm a stakeholder governor for the University of Birmingham.
My name is Mustaq Mirza. I'm a service user and service user governor.
My name is Fahim. I'm the Trust Service User Governor and also the Lead Governor. And so basically in my service user lead governor role, I represent service users that use our services, and in my lead governor role, I try and keep all the other governors in line, sort of, because there's 20 other governors, which could be difficult sometimes, but they're a nice bunch. Yeah, we get on.
Over the last 12 months, I've attended the Council of Governor meetings. I'm also a member of the Nom and Rem committee meetings, take part in NED appraisals, and one of the things I've been doing regularly is going out into different services with the Medical Director Hilary Grant and speaking to staff and service users about their experiences of the Trust.
So over the last 12 months I've been working to ensure that there's a real connection between the frontline delivery of policing and the BSMHFT Trust. So one of the highlights has been we ran a programme where we trained just under 3,000 police officers around mental health awareness, and that was using Trust staff to come and talk about signs and symptoms and the things that really matter to give us the skills to be able to do our job properly. But really importantly, what we've done is use lived experience consultants to really help us shape the way that we offer our service delivery. And for me that's really important because it gives us an opportunity to make our staff understand what really matters to people on the street when we deal with them. So that's been a really good point for us, and actually moving forward I think developing a really strong recovery model, understanding how the peer networks and joining all of that together will be a real push for me for the next 12 months.
In the last year, since the last AGM, I've been involved in the recovery college work and the recovery for all. So I've been doing that since we first started. I think it's about 2014. I've also been working on RAID Plus, and I'm also working on the family and carer pathway. So these two projects are the main ones at the moment for me. It's the family carer pathway and RAID Plus, and I'm still doing the trust induction. So that's for all new starters. So I have to stand in front of them on the first Monday of the month. And talk to them about and tell them about the trust, and then I have to come back on the Tuesday with the chair and have lunch with them, and then we do that on the third Monday and Tuesday in the month.
I'm also involved in attending the board meetings every month and also the Council of Governors, and I'm a member of my local GP participation group, and I'm becoming more involved in that on the mental health side now, so that we can actually work together. I also attend with fellow Solihull governors regular meetings, so that in order that we can look at what is actually happening in Solihull and the planning aspect of it.
I've been working over last year. I'm involved in recovery advisory group, a recovery steering group for Recovery for All, and I sit on the interview panel.
In the last year, I have been involved with the Mental Health Matters event in Solihull that was instigated by the local GP practices, of which I'm a member of the group, the patient group. That was a great success. I've also been involved with the Recovery College here since its onset in 2014. I'm a member of the steering group and the advisory group and work, and also I'm a facilitator at one of the courses. I do an awful lot of work out there in the community representing carers, supporting them in their crises and trying to do some signposting to help them get some help for their loved ones.
I'm also a Solid Mind chairperson and do a lot of voluntary work in that area. I also take part in place inspections which checks the environment of hospitals and wards, which gives me an opportunity to also see service users and staff working and living in that environment.
Being a governor for me has been really my life in retirement. I've had quite a few years now of representing carers, and it just gives me great feeling to know that I can help somebody.
So for me, being a stakeholder governor is really, really important, because what we try to do is bring the engagement between the partners to the trust to ensure that actually we understand the needs of the service users and carers and understand how we can then translate that into system change and operational delivery. So as a policeman, my ambition is to try and make sure that actually we deliver really good quality of care and service to our public, and actually matches what we try and do with what the trust is doing. But also in the combined authority world, trying to ensure that actually we try and improve the service delivery that we deliver across the West Midlands region, and actually learn the best practice that's been developed through BSMHFT and roll that out across the region as well. So for me, I have a really good view at being able to look across the whole of the system and see where good is, where there are some challenges, and actually then use the influence I have as being a governor to help to move that agenda forward.
Being a governor, I hope that I do manage to help others, and part of my involvement with the choir has proved that people who have mental illness get rewards from singing, and through that I've become involved in various aspects of helping. Many years ago I also had help from the trust, and I just want to give a bit back.
It means a lot, really, mostly to represent service users, and also to maybe when possible to challenge things that need to be looked at. I usually at council governors meetings ask for presentations for different services that we deliver, which give an insight for us governors to view and question how services are presented.
I'm a proper activist. I have a passion for mental health, because which I have suffered. I have lived in experience, which is when I help somebody, it heals me. So that's why I'm doing it. Not for why I get up in the morning. I got a purpose, and why I set up helping others. I help myself.
It's an honor, it's a privilege. I mean, I never thought, I would be in this position when I first started volunteering for the trust back in 2003. And I have been a governor from the onset, so I think this is my 4th term now. And I've been a lead governor for about 4 years. And it is a really, a good thing, especially when things go right for you and when you sort people's problems out and they smile and they thank you. I mean, this last year has been a testing year. I mean, there's been some difficulties, both professionally and personally, and there's been some highlights and also one of the highlights is like attending the family fun days. So I've been going to all the family fun days since we started doing them, and I think we've done them in Linden Clinic for the last 3 years, and I go to that one. But mostly to support the people who organise the day and just to see how the other half live in Solihull.
I think being a governor for Birmingham and Solihull Mental Health Foundation Trust is a really important role for me. I think it's really important that the university is involved with the trust, and also that I can feed back to students and to staff about the valuable work that's being done here, and also about the experiences of service users, carers and staff who are involved in mental health.
Okay, so just a few quick words. I mean, a lot of the presentation you've already seen, so I'm just going to quickly touch on some of the things that were mentioned. So the question that Barbara asked and Sue answered it beautifully. I mean, that is what RAID Plus is all about. RAID Plus is not instead of something, it's as well as it's a way of predicting when someone is about to go into a crisis. We're in the early stages at the moment, and I know the BBC have shown a great interest in the media, actually want to get involved with it, and I've said it in a few meetings that when we've got a positive story that we want to give the media to, put it out there, they won't do it, and they always pick up the negative. So, John, let the BBC beg us and let them get on their knees before we actually cooperate with them and, let them have access to RAID Plus. And the family carer pathway, I mean, it's been rolled out to 3 pilot sites. and it's been a success. So hopefully life will be made easier for service users, life will be made easier for carers and staff. We're in the process. We had it piloted in 3 sites. So we had it piloted at Woodstock Lane, Endeavour Court, and Cameron. And we're in the process of setting up focus groups to get feedback from service users, carers, and staff, and see how it all went. John also talked about, and I think Sue did, about solar. And like everyone else, I mean, I was really disappointed with the rating we got from the CQC last year. But when I found out that we were sending in, I mean, I don't like mentioning individuals because it's always a team effort, but I'm going to do here. When I found out we were going to send in Elaine Murray to sort it out, Elaine Murray is like the pocket rocket, but don't be fooled by her size, because I think she can pack a punch if she wants to. So I'm really glad that that's sort of turned around. And then what else? I mean, some of the ideas that I get, it's because I can't sleep too well, and I get up a few times throughout the night, and most of my ideas come to me about 4 o'clock in the morning when I'm sitting in the garden having a cup of tea and having my cigarette. And and sometimes when I get the ideas, I mean, before I actually contact Sue, I'll phone Hannah or Dan or any of the other PAs. Hannah, you're all part of hashtag Team Fahim. So I run my ideas past them first. And if they say, yes, it's a good idea, then I'll go up to Sue and say, Sue, I think we should go along with this. The other thing that happened this year, we had the West Midlands Combined Authority Thrive Awards at West Bromwich Albion Football Ground. And my wife decided to go along with me. And that was great, because one of the comments Sue made to my wife, she goes, I didn't think you existed because Fahim's always talking about you, but we've never seen you, so now you know my wife does exist. And I think people still haven't grasped the thing about lead governor. I mean, I'm supposed to be ordering people about, but I still get ordered about, so I mean, I don't mind anyway, so that's fine. And finally, like this morning, I was thinking about Catherine, Catherine who got MBE, and well done to her, congratulations on that. And I'm thinking about the number of people I know now that, have been awarded by the Queen. So the first person I met who was awarded by the Queen CBE was Sue Davis. I know Rose has been given an MBE. A couple of years ago, I went to the Royal Orthopaedic because they had their elections and they were having their first meeting, and they wanted us to tell them how to go about, challenging the board and, how to do all that. So I was sent along to go and talk to them about how we challenge the board and how we do our meetings. And I was very welcome there. I mean, I walked and I was there for about an hour, and they all had names, not names, but just their titles in front of them. And the chair just said the chair. So I was in there. They asked me questions. I answered some of the questions. And at the end of it, the chair came to me and we were having a general discussion. And then she gave me a business card. And I looked at the business card and it said Dame Eve Buckland. And I had like the shock of my life. I said, I'm really sorry. I didn't know you were a dame. And I hope what's the name, sort of behaved in an appropriate way and, etiquette and all. She goes, no, it's fine. You did fine. And I was thinking about it this morning. I mean, there's so many people getting, awards and titles. So, John, I think Sir John and Lord Fahim, I wouldn't mind Sir Fahim, but I don't like Sir Fahim. And Lord Fahim, I don't know if you all heard about a person called Lord Aleem. He's a guy who's got so many cars and everything. And I've never seen him, but I've just taken a dislike to him. So, but I still want that title, Lord Fahim. I know it clashes with him, but and I hope you've had a really good time here today. And thank you for coming. We hope to see you next year. And hopefully Barbara will be here with me next year.
Okay, there was supposed to be a slot for questions, but I noticed Fahim sort of left the stage before that. We got to. Were there any questions that anybody wanted to pose to governors? No. So I'd just like to place on record our thanks again to our governors. As I say, they are all volunteers, and they do really add value in challenging the board and monitoring what the board is doing. A reminder to everyone that both the Council of the Governors and the board meet in public. We don't very often have members of the public attend, but staff are members of the public from that point of view. So on the last Wednesday of every month, the board meets here in the morning. We'd love to see more people coming along just to have a look at what we're talking about the sorts of things we're making decisions on. I think you'd find it interesting. Most members of staff who come because they've been told it would be a useful thing to do usually come in sort of slightly grumpily, thinking 400 pages of papers and, this is going to be boring, and mostly go out saying that was really interesting. I had no idea that this was what you discussed. And the Council of Governors is always very lively. So do please take advantage of the fact that they are in public. We're not yet streaming them, so if you want to witness, you do at the moment still need to come along. So is there any other business anyone wants us to discuss? Okay, so then we will move on. Last year, I think the choir sang at the start of the AGM. One of my recalcitrant non-executive directors was heard to comment, never mind the finances, why can't we just hear the choir all afternoon? So, the Wellbeing Choir are very welcome. We're delighted to have them with us, and you're going to want us to sing along, aren't you, at some point in the presentation. Welcome.
Come on.